All right, moving on to 10.0, the Superintendent's Report. And I now turn it over to Dr. Little.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We are just going to go directly into our presentations because so much of the presentations are focused on what the work has been over the last month. And we're going to begin with Dr. Thomas Rivers and Mr. Van Bowers, who are going to talk about the instructional model shifts and where we are and about kind of a peek into that future, but how we've kind of made these last couple model shifts, and we wanted to present to you, especially in regards to our elementary schools, who had a number of recommendations associated with that coming back from 4-day to 5-day. And as you know, that today was actually the first day that our elementary schools came back. I would call it 5 days face-to-face, but it's not exactly true that today is this is a 4-day week with the holiday off, or not holiday, but with the off day yesterday. But today it really begins their return to 5-day face-to-face. So Mr. Bowers, if you want to walk us through the elementary model shifts, and I know Dr. Rivers is going to then talk about high school and middle school.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Little. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for having us here tonight to brief you on this instructional model change. First of all, we'll start with our elementary school transition. And as Dr. Little said, that started today, actually. So this Friday will be the first Friday for all-day instruction for our elementary students. And I will tell you that our principals and our teachers are excited about that. You know, they're really doing well. They were ready to make this transition, and I touched base with several of them today, and things are going really well. So just to give you a little background on how we got to this point, we've been working on this for certainly well over a month. We wanted to make sure that we had a very deliberate, safe transition. So we started well over a month with a transition team studying this. Dr. Little advised us to be ready when the time came, and so that's what we did. We assembled a team of over 25 teachers, assistant principals, and central services staff. And we began to think about what a 5-day return would entail. And so through this process, we certainly kept SLT up to date, Dr. Little along the way, and in the end, the team produced several recommendations that we'll go over now. So first of all, the team felt very strongly that we needed to go ahead and extend the school day. Our wish would have been to extend the school day back to our normal hours. However, with the secondary schools not being on the same schedule, we had transportation issues, and that just wasn't possible. So I'd like to thank Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Kurtz for working with us to at least extend our day for 20 more minutes. And that new time starting today was 7:40 to 2:10. The next recommendation was that we provide our teachers with a minimum of 40 minutes of planning time daily, because that really was a major concern, that we provide good planning time for our teachers. And we had a few related art schedules due to the COVID restrictions that were not giving that 40 minutes. And so we had to work through all that with our principals, and they just did a wonderful job making sure that we have a 40-minute period in place for planning. And that is, of course, a minimum. Some of them have 45. Also, we wanted to make sure that students had at least 30 minutes a day to move, play, and remove their mask. And again, this is a minimum. Our principals have done a really great job of making sure that kids have more time than that. They really have enjoyed having the 2 recesses that we've implemented during the COVID time, and many of them have kept that in place and feel that it's greatly beneficial to the students. On Fridays, we talked about giving teachers more autonomy in building their schedules because we have such varied needs at the elementary level. We have students in many different places in their educational journey. And so we wanted to remove the time requirements for core content on Fridays so that our teachers, if they needed to spend more time in small group instruction and ELA, then they could do that. Or if they wanted to spend more time in math, they could do that. So all of our principals have worked with their teachers to really design a schedule on Friday that directly addresses the needs of all of the students, and also allows for time for the teachers to have planning and collaboration. Okay. I'd like to thank Mr. Salters and Matt Warren for providing an additional sprayer for disinfecting classes in a more timely manner. That was one issue that the principals brought to our attention, that some of the teachers were having to vacate their classes early in the afternoons in order to get the room sprayed, disinfected. And so having an additional sprayer at each school helps us to do that in a more timely manner. Also, the addition of another housekeeper as well has really helped us to do a better job with disinfecting the classrooms. Also, we advise the principals to construct schedules to allow teachers ample time for planning and other duties such as parent meetings. So they really focused on giving that related arts block, also working on not planning meetings and faculty meetings and things in the afternoon so that teachers can have good time in the afternoon to plan as well. We also recommended that principals have discretion over their lunch schedules. And the reason that is the case is because our buildings are so different. Our cafeterias are different sizes. It's just not a one size fits all for all elementary schools. So we have given our principals the flexibility to meet the needs of their students and their staff. So basically what that means is that for lunch, you have to maintain social distancing. So of course that means that you could not have a normal lunch schedule, but you could take one, maybe two classes and socially distance them in the cafeteria. And you could work out a schedule that rotates through the week so that kids have the opportunity to move throughout the building and have lunch in the cafeteria, because that's something that they really haven't had a chance to do this year. Now, I will tell you that many of the teachers and many of the principals have really liked eating in the classroom. They feel like that it saved a lot of time, cut down on transition, so some of the schools are deciding we're just going to continue to do that. So again, flexibility is the key here, and our principals have really done a good job doing what's right for their schools. Okay, moving over to the next page. We, in coordination with Dr. Little and Mr. Salters and actually all of SLT, we brought the recommendation to allow for some volunteers to come back in the building, because our teachers were saying that, you know, since we stopped having volunteers in the building, that all of the administrative kind of things that volunteers would help out with, running papers and that sort of thing, they were doing all that themselves, plus having IEP meetings, plus planning for their instruction and planning for e-learning days. And it was really taking a toll, and they said if we could just have a few volunteers back, that would really help us. And so we came forth with that recommendation, We worked with HR as well to make sure that we do this safely. And so we are going to allow some volunteers to come back, work directly in the workroom. These are not volunteers that are going to go into the classroom and work with students. We're not ready to do that yet, but they can go in and do administrative kind of things in the workroom. Also, again, thanks to Matt Warren, Mr. Salters, we are getting more plexiglass. As a matter of fact, I think that's probably already happened to make sure that our related arts classes, those classes that have tables, that the plexiglass is in place so that we can do some more movement in terms of going to related arts. And then we wanted to make sure that principals had good notice, at least 2 weeks, to plan, because it did require lots of scheduling changes, and of course we did accomplish that. We gave them a 2-week notice that this was going to happen. Finally, just to list our priorities here as we go through the rest of the year. Number one, of course, is student and staff safety. We're not going to sacrifice our safety measures, continuing with the family model as much as possible, continuing with social distancing, continue with masks during the day. So that is something that we're going to continue to focus on. Also, I want to give a big shout out to our school counselors, because they have done a wonderful job addressing the social and emotional needs of our students and our families during this very difficult time. And at the elementary level, we see lots and lots of family issues that are brought into school, and our counselors have just done a wonderful job dealing with that, and all of our principals as well, making sure that we have time built into the day to address social and emotional needs of our students. Also, as I mentioned before, we're very focused on our core instruction, our reading, and our math. Our teachers are really doing a great job working in small groups to address some of the deficiencies that we're seeing. Flexibility, as I said before, is the name of the game. We have to stay flexible. We have to understand that all of our schools are not exactly the same. They're not the same size. They're not made up of the same people. We have issues that we have to be flexible on, and our principals have done a really good job with that. And finally, making sure that we maintain communication with our families. That's so important, but I am very proud of our principals for the communication that they put forth with our families and with the faculty through various means. Okay, I'll let Dr. Rivers go through the timeline and talk about secondary schools, and then I'll hang around, so we'll take questions at the end.
Appreciate it. Kind of want to start with just giving you an overview of our timeline. And we're in March now, and believe it or not, the school year is getting close to the end, but we've done a lot in just a year. And thank goodness we feel like things are coming to an end with COVID-19 and the vaccine, teachers getting the vaccine. But it's important to kind of just look back and recap some things with our timeline. So we started the school year in August and September in the hybrid model. Cohorts A and B of students, half our student population were going on Monday, Tuesday, and the other half on Wednesday, Thursday, with Friday being an e-learning day for those students who are face-to-face. Keep in mind, we still had a large group of our students in our Lula program for online program, but for face-to-face, we were in a hybrid model through September. And then on October 5th, we moved to a 4+1 learning model. And during this time period, we were always analyzing our data, looking at number of students are being quarantined, also being mindful of trying to get our youngest learners back. So we were in constant communication with principals, central service individuals, talking with teachers and staff to make sure when should we move and when it's best analyzing our quarantine data. So cohorts A and B for pre-K through second grade, October 5th, we moved them through to a 4+1 learning model. We also identify students who need the most support in grades 3 through 12. And so served in a self-contained classroom, those students with IEPs, as well as some of our English language learners in grades 3 through 12. And so that was our focus on October 5th. October 19th, we grabbed the next group of students in cohorts A and B, grades 3 through 5, and moved them also to the 4+1 learning model from the hybrid model. We then extended the priority groups to middle and high school. Again, looking and identify students who need the most support to get them back in school to as many days as possible. And so that was kind of a direction at the time, October 19th. So we moved next to November 9th. Again, looking at what needs to happen next to get our youngest learners back in school. So cohorts A and B for grade 6 in middle school, brought them back to that 4+1 learning model, and then we extended priority groups to students in high school. Again, identify students who are struggling, who may be behind in some of their courses, as well as our seniors who need support to finish school. So principals and administrators worked hard to identify students in those priority groups. November 16th, we completed middle school at that time by looking at grades 7 and 8 and bringing back cohorts A and B to the 4+1 learning model. Keep in mind that one day is that e-learning day on Friday, asynchronous type instruction and support. Small group meetings are happening on Fridays. Teachers working with groups of students and sometimes inviting some students to school from Lula in the building also to support them. And then we continue to bring back additional priority groups in high school up until November 16th. So at that time, that brought us to Thanksgiving. And if we recall what's happening during that time period, Thanksgiving break, winter break, December through February, we decided to delay our transitions based on all the evidence that was in front of us with the increase in numbers in the community as far as COVID-19. There was a high community spread, so we paused during that time period from December through February. And then we started to analyze more of our data at that point and decided that it was a good time to make a transition to our high school students from March 1st, and that was roughly 2 weeks ago now, and to bring them back to the 4+1 learning model. So that happened on March 1st for students in high school, bringing all those students back to the 4+1 learning model. And then on March 16th, this current week, today, we welcomed our elementary school students back to 5 days of school. That has always been our intent, to get students back as soon as we could, based on all the information that we have in front of us. So our elementary students are back in school for their 5 days of school. And we announced last week that we will be moving our middle school students to 5 days of school right after spring break. And we've been analyzing the quarantine numbers, and we did have a spike early February of about 200 middle school students being quarantined. That's now under 100. And so as those numbers go down, it gives us the evidence that we need to go forward to bring more students back to school for 5 days. And so we're hopeful that, given the trends that are happening in our community and nationwide, that things will remain that way even through spring break. But we will be ready to pivot if we have to. But right now, the plan is to bring middle school students back for 5 days the week we return from spring break. And then high school will be right after that. Again, we're going to look at numbers. We had 2 weeks of data with our high school students in the 4+1 learning model, and those numbers are also under 100. And many of those numbers are coming from students in athletics and outside events, activities that are happening. So that causes our students to have more quarantine and close contact numbers in high school compared to elementary and even middle school because of their ability to be more mobile as individuals, as young adults. So secondary considerations, things that we have discussed with our administrators in several meetings on what we need to do to get ready for increased days in middle school and high school. Principals will work hard to construct schedules so that teachers have as much planning time and collaborative time in their rooms as possible. And so when we lose those e-learning Fridays, right now they've been dedicated to having some IEP meetings, collaborative planning with teachers, professional learning activities that are happening in the school. So we want to take some of those things off their plate so they can still have time to provide the instruction that's necessary when they lose those Fridays. Principals will also try to consider a schedule, and Mr. Bowers kind of mentioned this, to allow small groups of students use the cafeteria or eat outside the classroom for lunch. Right now, all students are having lunch in the classrooms, and that's been our safety measures to mitigate any kind of spread. But hopefully, slowly, we can bring a few students to the cafeteria if we're able. It'll be kind of a school decision. Not every school can do it because they're much larger, such as a high school. But some of our middle schools could bring smaller groups to the students to the cafeteria and keep them socially distanced. But right now, the classrooms are working, and we may still stay in that place. As I mentioned earlier, schools will offer asynchronous professional learning opportunities for teachers instead of encumbering their time on Fridays or throughout the school day, because they need that time to kind of plan to take care of any students who are being quarantined, as well as work with some students who are in our online academy. Teachers will support the quarantined students by allowing them to Zoom in class when possible, and also by creating virtual lessons for them. So we have cases where students have been in close contact, they're out for 14 days, and so we want to support them as best we can, and that's what those Fridays were being used for. And when we don't have those, we got to find those opportunities so they can support those students. Central Services will provide schools with additional sprayers. We kind of mentioned that earlier. And then we also will bring in more plexiglass to our schools to support any kind of things that we need in classrooms to mitigate the spread. And so all those things are considerations that we have in place for secondary schools as well as elementary. And that concludes the presentation on reentry and the shifts that we're making right now in elementary and middle and high school. And Mr. Bowers and I, we're available for any questions you may have.
I wanted to add one quick thing just about the quarantine numbers. So we are tracking quarantine numbers over the next couple of weeks to see an entire pattern of what quarantine is happening. Before we make any high school decisions, we want to make sure that we're not it's not triggering large amounts of quarantining, because then that becomes more problematic when you take away time that you would support students in the quarantine model. So that's what we're really tracking this week and into next week.
That's correct.
I guess I would like to say thank you, because it looked like we had about 8 different school models there over the 2020-21 calendar year. And I know just trying to plan vacations in my little world of a family of 5, every time you have to change your vacation because of something, it's a bunch of work. So
Yeah.
y'all have packed in 8 school years into 1 year with planning. So again, I want to thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great way to put it.
Board, any other questions for Dr. Rivers or Mr. Bowers?
It felt like the first day of school, elementary. I was dropping my daughter off this morning at Midway and saw all the cars lined up. It felt like the first day of school again, with the traffic that was out there in elementary schools. So we're looking forward to doing the same thing in middle school and high school as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think the traffic patterns have been different every couple weeks all
Yeah.
year. It's gone from really not bad traffic to, oh, this is more like normal.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.